In the dusty archives of ancient India lies an epic so vast, so detailed, that it dwarfs the combined works of Homer, the Mahabharata, over 100,000 verses chronicling a war that supposedly raged 5,000 years ago. But what if I told you that hidden within its poetic verses are descriptions so precise, so eerily familiar, that they mirror the most devastating weapon humanity has ever created? What if the Mahabharata isn't just mythology, but history? Listen to this passage from the Drona Parva describing Ashwatthama's use of the Brahmashira weapon. A blazing shaft, possessed of the effulgence of smokeless fire, was let off. It was capable of destroying the three worlds. Dense arrows of flame, like a great shower, issued forth upon creation, encompassing the enemy. Now consider this description from the Vana Parva of the legendary Brahmastra. It was a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns rose with all its splendor. These aren't the crude weapons of bronze and iron we associate with ancient warfare. These descriptions speak of something far more terrifying. Weapons that could level cities, weapons that glowed with the light of 1,000 suns. But the weapons themselves are only part of the puzzle. The Mahabharata describes effects that sound remarkably familiar to anyone who has studied nuclear warfare. The epic speaks of warriors whose hair and nails fell out after exposure to these weapons. It describes how metal objects became soft and pliable, birds turned white and fell from the sky, food became poisoned and inedible. Even the unborn were affected, with children born deformed and diseased. Does this sound familiar? These are textbook symptoms of radiation poisoning, described thousands of years before humanity even understood the concept of atoms. The text even mentions how survivors had to wash themselves and their equipment in rivers to purify themselves. Today, we call this decontamination. The stories might be dismissed as poetic exaggeration, but archaeology tells a different tale. In 1922, archaeologists discovered the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, cities that once thrived in the Indus Valley. What they found defied explanation. These weren't cities destroyed by earthquakes or floods. They were cities that appeared to have been abandoned suddenly, their inhabitants fleeing in terror. Streets were littered with skeletons, many holding hands as if caught in some sudden catastrophe. More intriguingly, archaeologists found evidence of vitrification. Sand and stone melted into glass. This occurs naturally, only at temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. Nuclear explosions create exactly these conditions. In 1947, when the first atomic bomb was tested in the Alamogordo Desert, the sand beneath Ground Zero turned to glass. The lead scientist, Robert Oppenheimer, reportedly quoted the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds," the same text that describes these ancient superweapons. The Mahabharata doesn't present these weapons as magic. Instead, it describes them as advanced technology, complete with operating instructions and safety protocols. The text warns about the catastrophic consequences of their use, describing how they could render entire regions uninhabitable for years. Consider the character of Drona, the weapons master who taught both the Pandavas and Kauravas. He's described not as a mystical sage, but as a scientist and engineer who understood the terrible power of these weapons. The epic repeatedly emphasizes that such weapons should only be used as a last resort, and only by those with the wisdom to understand their consequences. The parallels to modern nuclear doctrine are striking. The concept of mutually assured destruction, the emphasis on deterrence over actual use, the recognition that these weapons could end civilization itself, all of these ideas appear in the Mahabharata. Perhaps most compelling is the description of Kurukshetra after the war. The battlefield is described as cursed, a place where nothing would grow for years. Water sources became contaminated. The very soil seemed poisoned. Recent soil analysis of the traditional Kurukshetra site has revealed unusually high levels of radiation, far higher than natural background levels. While modern contamination cannot be ruled out, the levels are consistent with ancient nuclear activity. Local legends speak of areas near Kurukshetra where vegetation grows strangely, where animals avoid certain regions, where the water tastes different. These oral traditions have persisted for millennia, passed down through generations of farmers and herders. The Mahabharata isn't alone in describing such weapons. Ancient texts from around the world contain similar descriptions. The Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of weapons that could destroy mountains. Irish legends tell of the Tuatha De Danann wielding weapons of light. Even the Bible describes the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in terms that echo nuclear devastation. Could these be distant memories of a global catastrophe? Evidence of a lost civilization that achieved nuclear technology only to destroy itself in a worldwide conflict? Modern nuclear physicists who have studied these ancient descriptions are divided. Some dismiss them as coincidental similarities between mythology and modern weapons. Others find the technical details too precise to ignore. Some scholars of ancient Sanskrit texts noted that the mathematical principles described for these weapons align with modern nuclear physics. The descriptions of chain reactions, critical mass, and radioactive decay appear in Sanskrit texts thousands of years old. The ancient Indians even had a term, Brahmastra Vidya, which translates roughly to nuclear science. The texts describe practitioners who understood the fundamental forces of creation and destruction, who could manipulate matter at its most basic level. Some researchers propose that evidence of ancient nuclear technology has been deliberately suppressed. They point to the classification of certain archaeological sites, the mysterious disappearance of artifacts, and the academic resistance to investigating these theories. Why would such evidence be hidden? Perhaps because it challenges our fundamental understanding of human history. The idea that civilization is linear, that we've progressed steadily from primitive to advanced, is central to our worldview. Evidence of ancient nuclear technology would shatter this narrative. So what are we to make of these ancient accounts? Are they merely the imaginative flights of poetic minds, coincidentally echoing modern weapons? Or do they represent something far more profound, evidence of a forgotten chapter in human history? The Mahabharata itself provides a sobering warning. After describing these terrible weapons and their devastating effects, it emphasizes the horror of their use. The survivors are traumatized, the land is poisoned, and civilization itself nearly collapses. Perhaps the real message of the Mahabharata isn't about ancient nuclear weapons at all. Perhaps it's a warning from our ancestors about the price of unchecked technological power. Whether these weapons existed 5,000 years ago or not, we face the same choices today that the heroes of the Mahabharata faced. Will we choose wisdom or destruction? The answer, as always, lies in our hands.